Hey folks, this is Tron Games. Welcome to Total War Warhammer 3. Today we're going to do a video guide for getting started with Orion and the Wood Elves faction. So, the one of the major things that catches people off guard in a campaign with the Wood Elves is that they play quite a bit differently than a lot of the other factions. And so we'll go through some of their major faction effects. So to start with, there is a kind of reduced upkeep cost for Orion's army and other armies for every active war that you have going on. So the more groups that you're at war with, basically the lower upkeep cost you pay. So just something to keep in mind. And then there's this Wild Hunt event. And so the Wild Hunt event basically gives you a buff for 5 turns where you get additional, buffs to your faction leader. Orion gets a really large buff to how quick he is, his melee attack, charge bonus, things like that. And you get additional movement speed after you raise settlements. And raising settlements is a common thing that does happen with the Wood Elf faction. And then it also indicates you get reduced cooldown to Deep Roots teleportation. We'll talk about what that is. And lords in offices get stronger bonuses. So we'll talk about one of the first things here. So the Wood Elves have this stance called Ride the World Routes. This works a lot like the Dwarves, where you can kind of like teleport almost through impassable terrain. So I could actually teleport over there if I wanted to, kind of completely bypassing the fact that I can't get through this chunk of the map. You can like jump over mountains and things like that. So it's a really mobile faction in that sense. But one of the main things that this faction has access to is what's called the World Routes. And so there are different magical forests located around the world, kind of in different places. There's pretty much one in every major section of the map, and you can actually teleport instantly to one from your magical forest to a different one. And so that is kind of a major campaign mechanic that you can use to go and either reinforce another Wood Elf faction that's having trouble, or you can go actually secure part of the other forest yourself. So something to keep in mind, basically the forest health mechanic. This is a really, really important mechanic for the Wood Elves. Basically, the more healthy your forest is, basically the better your diplomatic relations are, better your growth is, and the forest health mechanic is really important for a certain campaign mechanic, which we'll talk about in a second. One of the things I do at the beginning of this campaign just about all the time is I always upgrade these as quickly as possible. You can see that they take a long time to upgrade, and they give additional benefits. So they give growth benefits, but you can see a couple of other items in there. It reduces corruption, adds defenses to the settlement, improves your control through your whole faction, increases your forest health, and then unlocks some Confederation missions with Torgovan and Widrioth. So we'll do that. It takes 8 turns though to do that, so it takes quite a while. This is the two factions, Widrioth and then Torgovan is over here. And so you want to confederate these guys. Their Confederation missions, when you get them unlocked in 8 turns, involve fighting battles with the Greenskins, as well as fighting battles with Bretonnia. So the major thing to keep in mind with improving your forest health is there's a few different ways to do it. You can fight battles in these areas that will actually improve your forest health. You can actually raise or do different things to areas that border your forest. So for my forest here with the Oak of Ages, there's Carrick Bufdar, Grimhold, Carrick Norn, Carrick Asgraz, Paravon, Quenelles, and Castle Carcassonne. And so those are the areas around that you're going to want to focus on either doing, you kind of want to do one of 3 things. You either want to raise them and burn them down. Raised settlements give kind of a bonus. If you are allied to the nation, so sometimes people will ally with Bretonnia off the bat. You can get an alliance with them, and that will help your forest. You can also actually conquer regions as well. So at the beginning of this campaign, there's a couple of things that you actually have a couple of options here. And I'll talk about one, and then we'll actually start to go towards the other ones. At the beginning here too, I would recommend fighting a lot of these battles manually. You'll just do better than the AI does. But I'm going to get some replenishment right away on this, and I could either continue along to Quenelle. This is an option, but the thing is that this army here is actually like reasonably powerful, and there is another group right there, and there's a couple of other factions nearby, Grom being one of them. So you can either continue kind of fighting up towards Paravon. The problem that I've found when I've tried to do this in this campaign is that I tend to run out of steam, and there's something that happens on the second turn that you want to be kind of semi-prepared for. So what I'm going to do is, even though this looks like a juicy target, I'm going to actually retreat and start heading back this direction. And the main reason that I'm doing that is because of the magical forest nature here. You actually get a specific mechanic that it happens to a couple factions, but the Wood Elves is the most common one, where you'll actually get a force that spawns, and that force is going to spawn right here, and in a couple of turns is going to come into the forest to attack. If you get to that forest quickly, you can do a couple of things. You can actually ambush it before it spawns, and it'll spawn a little bit weaker if you get there quickly. So it's good to be able to deal with that right off the bat. Orion actually spawns with a couple of points in his tree already, so just one important thing to note. And then we've got Orion kind of moving back towards this area, and again, I want to upgrade these buildings. You'll notice that they don't actually take population to upgrade, they just take a long time. What does take population to upgrade is some of your other buildings. So here, I'm actually going to build this. I want to grow this province kind of as quickly as I can, and the reason I want to do it is because if you actually look at the income generated by these, this one's 300, this one's 600, and this one's 300. If you can get all three of these going right away, you actually can get a significant amount of money quite quickly rolling in this settlement. Now the other thing too here that I tend to like to do is I tend to like to build the archer building, and so at this point I'm basically broke, but this building here isn't, it's honestly, sometimes you can build up to this in a couple of turns and unlock a Glade Captain. I'm just going to demolish it for now because I want to use it for something else in a bit. And so that's kind of a good like set of actions for the first turn. We are eventually going to come back this way because we want to fend off invasion. Now in terms of objectives, your objective is to complete the Ritual of Rebirth in Athelloren. That's something we haven't touched on yet, and we'll go through it now. And then you want to occupy, loot, raise, sack different settlements, and then here it's the same thing. You have a specific couple of items to do, and you want to perform some rituals of World Roots healing as well. So with this, there's this campaign mechanic called Amber. Amber is earned each time a Ritual of Rebirth is completed to heal a forest, and you do that by leveling up the Oak of Ages. Once you level that up there, then you get the option to complete a Ritual of Rebirth. Now in the tree here, this is a really interesting tech tree. There are a bunch of these in the middle that require Amber, and these are large faction bonuses. It actually says like right in some of these sections that like you're not likely to earn all of these, like you will not be able to research all these technologies in a single campaign, and that generally is true. It depends how long you're going to play for, but yeah, you want to be pretty choosy with these middle ones. I tend to either come down this direction just to get increased missile strength, because there's a lot of missile units, and missile units are quite powerful for the Wood Elf factions. So that's one other thing. And then we've got the offices. So you can actually appoint, when you have additional lords, you can appoint offices that will actually grant you different bonuses to your faction and to different regions as well. So just something to keep in mind as you go through there. In terms of diplomacy, actually this will make more sense if I advance the turn. So as I do this, we'll talk a little bit about you know, protecting this area. So there are a lot of factions in this area. This is a pretty like dense, playable factions area. So there's a lot of factions in the area that are quite strong, and you see Grom has kind of moved in and he wiped them out. Grom is one of the he's a big problem in this campaign. There are a few factions that don't tend to bother coming into the forest. Bretonia tends to be one of them. They don't tend to come into the forest if they don't have to. The dwarves as well are another faction that tends to not worry about coming into the forest. But there are factions like the Greenskins. They will come right into the forest and start wreaking havoc, as well as here's the forest encounter that started. So the Brayherds gather. So there's going to be a Beastman army that comes in from that direction, and we're going to move back to here, and we're just going to train a few additional troops because we want to get a couple of these going. Just grab a couple of them. Now here, you can actually come and take a look at some of these different options. In a few turns, I'm going to be able to add one of these as well, and I want that open slot available there. That's why I destroyed the other building, because I'm not going to train any of those troops anyways. And so here we're kind of done what we're going to do for this turn, but what we want to do is look at where factions are strong and which ones we want to tend to be aware of, I guess. So this faction here, Warherd of the Shadowgrave, is really one of the probably most dangerous factions to the Wood Elves, because they just have absolutely no fear about coming into the magical forest, and they start over here, but they tend to, if they do catch you, they do tend to ambush you. So you have to be really aware of their position as you move around. If you can catch them like trying to enter the forest, it's really good. You can ambush them. It's a really effective tactic, because if you get them, they're kind of done. Another faction to be aware of in this area is Belegar's faction. This faction is, if you get involved in a war with them, and you might, they tend to be really irritating, because they have Belegar starts with like a bunch of these Thanes, and these guys can be really annoying to try to deal with in the early campaign. But honestly, the ranged units you have are quite effective against the dwarves. So he usually comes up here and starts beating on the greenskins. One of the first things, or another faction to be aware of before we get to that, is Ikit Claws over here as well. So he is another dangerous faction in this area, and this faction here too can be dangerous if you go to war with them. I like to leave these guys alive because they make a really good shield against Ikit. So if Ikit decides to come up this way, they tend to hold the line pretty well, at least in the early game. But there are a few factions in the early game that make really, really good targets. So we were already at war with Paravon, and Paravon is likely going to get destroyed by Grom. They are very, very weak in the early game, and Grom usually comes up there and just kills them. Broken Nose we're not going to get involved with. They're kind of right here and over here, because Belegar is going to mess with them, which means the next weakest faction is actually this one. And this is a faction that we should go after, because they have, this is part of the Heathland. They are areas that we want to take. So I'm going to bump the turn ahead one more, just so you can see what happens here with this. And the one thing too is you can actually occupy areas of the Heathland around your forest, and that's actually not a bad thing to do. I don't find raising the settlements around your forest to be particularly effective, and it's just because there's so many factions, they'll just come in and populate it again. And if you're at war with that faction, you just end up fighting a lot of battles you don't necessarily need to. So here we can't quite get there with this stance, but we can with this one. So we're going to jump right on top of these guys, and we'll see if we ambush them or not. Perfect. So we were able to ambush them, and this is like a decent sized force, and we can just wipe them out immediately. Really good for us to get rid of that, and then we have some options to take some replenishment. I'm going to take that because I'm now stuck kind of outside of the forest, and I want to jump up here afterwards. So Orion is starting to level up reasonably well. There are a few different paths you can take. I tend to just get these hit points right off the bat because they're pretty accessible.
Protector of the oak.
Especially if you fight battles manually, it can be really good. Take those. And yeah, basically we want to continue to improve the health of the forest here. So you can see it started to build up. And if we go to the deep here, you've got to raise this quite a ways. So there's different tiers. So you've got to go all the way up to 500, and then you can perform the Ritual of Rebirth. So that's really kind of a good overview of the Wood Elves. At the beginning, I focus on getting these guys. Usually this faction will go to war up here as well. So you can usually take this settlement. If you do take this settlement, you can actually take, you can build a building there that buffs this region, which is really good. So I often will take and actually occupy this settlement to start with, purely so I can buff my kind of magical forest area a little bit, and you get to secure a little bit of kind of bonus forest health to build this up even higher. So taking on this really weak dwarf faction off the bat is really good, but the problem is it usually eventually pisses off Belagar because you took action against dwarves. So that's kind of all I've got for this one. If you like the content, feel free to leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more in the future. Thanks for watching.